Great. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to a RiverWoods guide to choosing a life care plan. My name is Lisa Clark, and I am joined by Heather Phillips, who's our Director of Marketing for the RiverWoods Group. In the coming hour, you're going to learn a lot about life care plans. A few housekeeping items first. We have everybody on mute today, but we really would love to hear your questions. You may submit your questions through the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a tablet or some other mobile device, that may be located at the side or the top of your screen, but it is the Q&A box that you want to submit your questions. We're going to prioritize questions today centered on the topic at hand, which is about life care communities. And if you have specific questions about the three individual communities, we'll probably try to take those offline with you because we want to try to answer kind of the most critical questions about the topic at hand. We always welcome your suggestions on how we can improve, so please share. And if you have an idea on what you think would be an interesting topic for folks tuning in today, please let us know. We're always open to suggestions, and we've actually created a few webinars along the way based on suggestions from our future residents and prospects. Before Heather takes over the show to talk about life care communities, I want to give you a little bit of a background on RiverWoods, who's sponsoring today's webinar. RiverWoods was the vision of these two women, Rosemary Coffin and Mariana Hatch, who started developing the concept of RiverWoods back in the 1980s. When they realized there wasn't really a great solution locally for aging for the population. So how to age and have peace of mind about healthcare. So those two ladies got together and formed RiverWoods Exeter. So today we have three communities that we operate in the state of New Hampshire. The original community of RiverWoods Exeter, which opened in 1994. RiverWoods Manchester, which we acquired from another company and rebranded it. We acquired in 2016. And then RiverWoods Durham was a new community that we built and opened in Durham, New Hampshire, and we opened that in 2019. All three of these communities are continuing care retirement communities where you would enter as an independent resident and then have the peace of mind of having healthcare services when and if your needs change. These communities are supported by the RiverWoods Group, and the RiverWoods Group has a CCRC board, so CCRC standing for Continuing Care Retirement Community. That is the governing board for our three communities. They consult with our system CEO, who is Justine Bogle, and she reports into the system board. So the system board is focused really on the mission and the future growth of the RiverWoods communities. And the group provides professional fee-based services and support to all three of our communities. So they are supporting functions like finance, information technology, human resources, marketing, and quality. And then the group also can fund at-risk portions of projects at each of our three communities, as well as new ventures. But it's important to note that each of the three RiverWoods communities are financially independent of one another, and each one of them has an annual opportunity to provide additional funding to the RiverWoods Group for special projects. I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Heather Phillips. Heather joined RiverWoods just this past February as our Director of Marketing. She brings a wealth of experience in strategic marketing of over 12 years. And Heather has a really interesting and relevant background in multifamily property management, as well as commercial real estate, boutique hotels, and interior design. So she brings a lot of skills into RiverWoods that really complement the services that we're providing to our residents here. Heather's created a sales and leasing training programs, and she's spoken nationally. She's led panels on successful marketing strategy and the impact of design and social media. She is absolutely thrilled to have transitioned to the continuing care, retirement, and healthcare world. And this makes her the third generation in her family to actually pursue this path. So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Hi, everybody. I am so grateful to be here and thank you for that great introduction, Lisa. Today we have a lot of information to cover, but I first wanted to take a moment to just thank you for even being here. It's a wonderful first step to understanding what's the best next step for you and learning more about CCRCs. I just wanted to clarify that this topic is a little bit more on the clinical side, and it speaks more to what a CCRC is and the basics of that, a little less towards lifestyle. But we do have some other trainings that do speak to those topics. And we're also going to be sharing with you an insider's guide that we have that expands even further information than what we're reviewing today. It has great checklists that we'll touch upon a little bit later, and also speaks to some of the things that you'll be looking for and good questions to ask as you explore more about CCRCs. So today we're going to talk about facts about aging today, the concepts of what a CCRC is, why this is an amazing time to be learning about this, and the different types of contracts that are available through CCRCs, what your options are, and then we'll take time for questions and answers. So as Lisa had said, any questions that come up, please use that Q&A box on your screen and place them in. We'll be reviewing that at the end of this. So let's get started in really talking about age. The country has never seen an age boom, hence the name the boomers, like it has right now. 10,000 people in the US turn 65 every day. This is a growth unlike anything that we've ever seen. And it means that there are a lot of you out there that need care as you age. But also it's a wonderful way for you to have more social opportunities, and just the fact that there's going to be more opportunities for you to find places. There's also a conundrum with demographics that's coming in. So we do have to understand that because there are more of you, there are actually going to be a less amount of people in the workforce to support your needs as time progresses. So to consider this, in 1950, there were 7.2 people for every person that was over the age of 65 in the workforce. In 2050, they're expecting that to be 2.1 people. So that's a very big change in understanding how many people would be available to provide care. And that is just for the workforce as a whole. That's not even just speaking to senior industry. So it really is something that could impact the cost of care and the care that's available. So something to consider as you're pursuing next steps. Good news is that life expectancy is on the rise. So if you are currently 65, the expectation is that you're going to live to be 84. If you're 84, you can expect to live to be 92. This is very, very good news. It means that there is more opportunity to live a very long and robust life, and people are living longer than prior generations. There are also more people aging solo than ever before. 30% of women, 37% of women are aging solo, and 19% of men. Also, 13% of women and 11% of men 65 plus are divorced. This means with single adults, if you consider something like a continuing care retirement community, it's much more opportunities for socializing and expanding on your community. Another thing to think about too is 70% of American couples older than 65 will need some form of long-term care. This length of care may vary person to person, everybody's different, but it is probable that you will need care at some time. Nursing home care is the most expensive level of care. And today, 20% of 65-year-olds will need long-term care longer than 5 years. 7% of women will need nursing home care for greater than 5 years. It's also understandable that often people underestimate the costs associated with nursing home care. Nursing home care can cost an average of $15,000 a month, and that's a starting rate for starting at, so that depending on the level of care, that can actually increase, also depending on where that care is coming from. And then 31% of people underestimate the cost of assisted living, which is $7,000 a month. At a CCRC, the advantage is that you would be coming in at a set rate in independent living, and that would maintain through these care levels. So another thing to consider is Medicare. Many people believe that they'll be covered by Medicare. However, this is not always accurate. Medicare will only cover 100 days of a long-term care situation after being hospitalized for 3 days or more. After that, you would be on your own. Long-term care insurance is a really great bridge to that future. It will provide a fixed coverage for a fixed amount of time. However, it doesn't say where you would get it or the convenience of that service. For example, you may end up in a place that's an hour away from family or more. The nice thing with CCRCs is it's really about pre-planning for the future. Medicare will not cover long-term needs, but a CCRC will. You will know who is providing the care and where it will be provided. And again, to beckon back at that percentage we were looking at before, 70% of people are likely to need this type of care. So it's a really wonderful way to plan for your future. So we want to talk kind of about what are your options as we, this is the first step in that. So hopefully from this, you'll leave and start making a plan. But the first thing that you may be considering is staying at home. The thought about staying at home is that you want to be a forever teenager and nothing's going to happen to you and you're going to go to sleep one day and not wake up. And that's an ideal situation. However, it's rare. The next option would be the bunker home method, that you would stay at home and then when services are needed and bring them in. That can come at a very high cost. And again, when we were talking about how the workforce is changing, it's harder to find the right caretakers and at a reasonable cost. The next one is cohabitation. It's a wonderful thing for your first relationship, but it's a whole different ballgame when it's talking about merging families or living with adult children. The first step in that is having those conversations. Talk to your family about these decisions and what opportunities would be available. Open up those conversations. I promise you, everyone's thinking about it anyway. But it's good to know what their life situation is in how they can best care for you or what the availability of that is, but also understand that it still may require additional services. The next option is assisted living in nursing homes. And that can really come after steps 1, 2, or 3. That can come unexpectedly as life's change. It is often something that you may have a little bit of limited control over your decisions of where you would go, and it does come at a much higher cost. And then the fifth option which is what we believe would be the best option, is to choose a CCRC. This is really planning and ensuring for your future. It's your comfort, it's housing and nursing needs, and those will be met for the duration of your lifetime. So jumping a little bit back about the history of a CCRCs, it's a concept that not everybody's familiar with, but it has been around for over 100 years. There are 1,900 of them across the country. Most often, they are not for profit. However, there are some that are for profit, and we'll get a little bit more into that when we talk about some of the contract options. So what is a CCRC? We're not considered real estate, although it's understood that it can be confused for that. We're really the prettiest insurance product you're going to ever see. A CCRC is regulated by the state. We look into our financial performance is reported to the state annually. It is considered that you're prepaying for and insuring for your potential assisted living and memory support or nursing care. And it is important to know that because it's an insurance product, a portion of this, your entrance fee and your monthly fees, may be considered tax deductible. It's also a bold lifestyle choice. By selecting a CCRC, you will have access to meeting lots of people. You'll be free from home maintenance, which can be a very big burden. You'll have access to fitness classes, to education opportunities, to activities, clubs, all kinds of amenities on the campus. And it really provides a lot of social options, and you'll be able to stay in control of your life and where you'll be if you do need more healthcare services. So CCRCs can vary across the country, and everyone is a little bit unique, but these topics are kind of the ones that would be consistent in what you would find. As a resident, you would be asked to come in at an age of 62 or higher. At a CCRC, you would come in as an independent living and be able to live safely on your own. We offer 4 levels of care, so that can be independent, assisted living, memory support, and nursing care. And a wonderful thing to know about that is you can transition between those levels of care. So for example, if you had to have a hip surgery and for a portion of time needed a little bit of additional care, you could move temporarily into assisted living and then move back into independent living as needed. Services and amenities are provided at every level. They typically would have 2 fees. The first would be the entrance fee, and then there would be a monthly fee. And again, a portion of that may be tax deductible. Some entrance fees are also refundable. It would be a percentage of that is refunded, and it is a very nice preservation asset for your family. And then all not-for-profit CCRCs also will have a benevolence clause. So if you do outlive your assets through no fault of your own, you can apply for benevolence. So typical services that will come when you live in a CCRC is there's flexible dining plans, and the food is amazing. Inside and out maintenance is taken care of. We have housekeeping and laundry services. There's transportation, and that can include helping you get to appointments or accessing towns, diverse fitness programs. There's a true amenity-rich living. Lots of different programs are offered, committees, lots of ways to get involved in the community. There's wellness clinics, increased level of care. And then we also include utilities and taxes. It's kind of I think the way to envision what's included is really there's an umbrella of what a CCRC is, and it does include all, independent living, assisted living, nursing home care, and memory supports. So let's talk a little bit about the contract types. There are three types that you will find. Type A is considered an all-inclusive. This provides consistency with your outflow of money. Entrance fee and monthly fees are based on the size of your home. You'll have full access to healthcare, and insurance covers all of this. Your monthly costs will remain the same with the exception of possibly if you were to do additional meals beyond your meal plan. This is a great opportunity for individuals or couples because it's at the highest level of insurance. Another thing to consider is that not everyone ages in the same way. So for spouses, if one spouse is at a different level of care, you can actually maintain two households while one is in independent living and the other may be in assisted living, but it would be at the same cost. The next option is in the middle of these two types of contracts. It's a type B, and has a defined contract. This is an entrance fee with a less refundability, though not all will have refundability. This is defined insurance. Refundabilities will vary. The monthly fee is based on the size of the home. Healthcare is included and insurance is defined. So this means that when you will initially pay less, but when you transition to healthcare, there will be a slight increase. This is a good option for those who do not want to pay for healthcare needs until they're needed. The cost will still remain less in the beginning than at-home care. The opposite of A is a type C. This is a rental. So entrance fees are zero or very little. Monthly fees are lower, but there is limited access to healthcare and no insurance. This is where most for-profit CCRCs will fall. There is no guaranteed of healthcare or that the assisted living would be nearby. Assisted living will also be at full cost at a type C. So for RiverWoods communities, RiverWoods Exeter and RiverWoods Durham are a type A. They're all inclusive communities, and RiverWoods Manchester is a type B community. This is a very high level look at all of this. There are a lot more details to these contracts, and the communities themselves are all going to be beautiful no matter where you're looking. But wherever you do go, you really want to learn the details of what is included and what you're getting for your contract. So always go in and ask those kinds of questions. So why do CCRCs really matter? It all adds up. There's better healthcare than ever, but that can come with a higher incoming medical and long-term care costs. We're also living longer, so that can happen at a longer time. The world has changed. Kids are what we call the sandwich generation with dual careers. They may live far away, or they're very pressed for time and in a way that's different from assisting from previous generations. Younger boomers are also caring for older boomers. The millennials are caring for their parents. So there's a lot of generational folds that are happening. Also, older adults are more outgoing and busy than ever before. Traveling, hobbies, education, it really doesn't end. So it's not about staying in a rocker or staying at home. You want to have more of a life, more social opportunities, and really get out and be able to live a little bit more. I do think it also beckons back to having conversations with your family and understanding what the best steps are. A lot of the reasons why people fail to plan is that they didn't really want to admit when care was needed. You don't necessarily love the idea of moving into a community initially, but there was something to consider. A survey was done and people were asked that did decide to stay home if they would do it again. And many people said no. after experiencing the transitions that they did at home. Timing of long-term care was unforeseen or unexpected. It's sometimes things you don't want to talk about. But again, remember, people are thinking about it. People care about you. You care about them. And because of that, you're going to want to know what your future hopes are. People think often that they always have more time. We all do, and time moves so fast. But keep that in mind, that there is a better action plan if that's in place. That you hope issues would resolve itself. We all do that sometimes, but being proactive is nothing but positive. Don't be afraid to make future plans. So another thing to think about is really understand that the next 5 or 10 years may look very different from what they do today. So congratulations again for taking this first step and learning about CCRCs, because that's really taking a step to understanding that those transitions may happen. Some changes are going to be good, as they always are, but some may be bad or unforeseen. And you have an opportunity now to start planning for those. If you don't plan for that, you may risk social isolation or changes in your physical needs and the costs associated with all of those changes. If we could say anything, it's really don't wait for a crisis. Have a plan in place. As people age, it's a very shocking statistic, but though 8% of people over 75 only spend 8% of their time communicating with others. There's also a 50% drop in communication compared to adults age 65 and older. And these numbers are actually increased for those that are aging solo. You want to be able to anticipate a time frame where you can not only thrive, but age and flourish if you're in a community. There was a study done at Harvard. It's the world's longest study on happiness, and it actually began in 1938. This author, Robert Waldinger, is the current lead of this study. He wrote a book called The Good Life, which summarizes it. And findings show that close relationships, more than money or fame, are what keep people happy throughout their lives. Those ties protect people from life's discontents, help to delay mental health or physical decline, and are better predictors of long and happy lives than either social class, IQ, or even your DNA. Choose and build a life of intention that includes social connection, forming, strengthening relationships, and it's a community that would help you remain happy and healthy. So something that as you pursue next step is understanding what the entering process could look like. At standard CCRCs, there will be a healthcare assessment prior to moving in, and that can vary. So it's a good thing to ask questions about that process. Some may have diseases that are excluded. They will ask for you to provide a medical history and a medical and cognitive assessments. For example, RiverWoods does not exclude based upon diagnosis. We do offer a clinical assessment with a nurse practitioner to discuss your ability to live independently. Another thing to expect would be a financial assessment. And you would want to qualify for whatever your chosen type of apartment that you're interested in. For that, you would provide an overview of your assets and income and a projected spending over your lifetime. I mentioned this earlier, but we do have an insider's guide that we'll be providing a link to. And this really expands even more on these concepts and gives you more of a peek behind the curtain of what questions may be important to you as you're exploring. And with that, we do have some checklists that are in there. We have a financial strengths checklist. This will, it's just important questions to consider. Is the community accredited by CCAC or CARF? Does the community, a member of leading age? Does the community have a resident finance committee? Can you directly speak with the CFO? Review and audit financial statements. Are they on the website? We do publish those. Do they meet state requirements or have a minimum liquid reserves? Is there a history of high occupancy rates? Is it maintaining itself? What is the history of rate increases? Is the community able to generate cash flow from profitable operations? Who is on the management team and the board of trustees? So who are the people that are really leading these things? Evaluate the financial ratios compared to industry standards. This is all information that should be available to you, and it's important things to ask. And as far as looking at the community, what would your refundability be? What are those percentages from the entrance fee? Are there resident members on the board of trustees? How involved are the residents in decisions of the community? Is the community mature, or is it a startup? Is it a newer community? Ask for copies of the resident survey results. Those may be done annually so that you can understand where the pain points are or where the successes are. What percentage of referrals come from residents? Who is saying, please come be my neighbor, you're going to love it here too? What happens if a resident were to run out of money? Does it have a benevolence clause? Man on the street, what do the residents say? And is the community planning for the future? Is it sustainable? So how do you learn more? I know that this was sort of an overview of CCRCs themselves, but we do have more information available that will speak to the lifestyles of the communities and more. So you could attend one of our 101 Zoom sessions. We have those on each of the communities. Schedule a tour and visit us in person. We would love to show you around the beautiful campuses and talk even further about what the amenities are and what's available to you as far as community and socializing. You can submit your information for financial approval or join our wait list by placing a reservation fee at the community of choice. And we also have some exciting things coming along the pipeline at RiverWoods. RiverWoods Exeter is planning for a unified health center on campus, in addition to independent living apartment homes. RiverWoods Durham is planning an expansion as well of independent living apartment homes. And for both of those, don't wait. It's a great time to get on be proactive and to join those wait lists. I'm going to hand it back over to Lisa.
Great. Thank you, Heather. We are going to open it up for questions, and while you're getting questions typed into the Q&A box, I just want to let folks know we have a great webinar coming up on October 22nd from 1 to 2 o'clock, featuring our CFO, Kevin Goyette, as well as a gentleman from the Ziegler Group. And they're going to be talking about the financial risks and rewards of choosing a life care community. We do this event annually. You may have joined it before, but every year there's updates to the information. So it's a great way to learn about the financial side of CCRCs. So that's, you can take your phone and scan that QR code if you want to get registered, or you can go to our website and register for that event. We have a couple of questions in the queue. I wondered, Heather, if we might start with the third question again about explaining again the broad differences between the 3 types of plans. And I don't know if you want to pull that slide back up or just speak to it. about the type A, type B, and type C, because that's pretty core to understanding the different types of communities. There we go.
All right. So in terms of each type, the type A is considered all-inclusive. So if you think about it, it's your highest level of insurance. So you're really prepaying for the care that you may need, but in a way that would maintain your financial commitment. So when you come in, you would have your entrance fee, and then a monthly fee would be set. And that monthly fee would be maintained through the duration of your care needs. So if you were to progress to, say, assisted living or memory care, that wouldn't change financially in a great difference. For a type B, the difference would be that when you come in, you would have a lower monthly rate, understanding that that will increase as you change levels of care. And then with a type C, that is considered a rental fee. So you're really paying into a rent as opposed to it being as an insurance. Is there anything you want to add to that, Lisa? I know you are our super expert.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, we have people on the webinar today who may have interest in one of the three or two of the three RiverWoods communities.
Yep.
Important to note that both Exeter and Durham are type A communities, and then RiverWoods Manchester is a type B community. And even between Exeter and Durham, the contracts are a little bit different. It depends if you're a single or a couple. But your sales counselor can follow up if you are looking at both of those communities and explain some of those differences. I want to address a question, really good question here about the shortage of healthcare personnel and how is RiverWoods ensuring that there's enough qualified healthcare personnel. Especially post-pandemic, it's been a real challenge, very competitive with healthcare workers. And RiverWoods actually did two things to address this. It was in 2021, we actually implemented a minimum wage increase that would address not only healthcare workers, but some of our service workers who are working in dining and housekeeping. So we raised our minimum wage for all those employees. In total, it affected about 2/3 of our employees because not everybody was at minimum wage, but even those that were slightly above that needed to be bumped up a little bit more. And then the following year, we actually implemented a wage increase for nurses and other healthcare workers because it became such a competitive landscape, particularly for nurses, trying to compete with hospitals, trying to compete with assisted living facilities, with home health care agencies. And so we implemented a major wage increase for our nursing staff in the last, I think it was in the last 2 years. And that helped quite a bit. We do also have an advantage, I would say, just environmentally within our workplace, in that we have 3 beautiful communities. The nurses are taking care of a consistent population of residents. So rather than it being a revolving door of acute care, it is a consistent feeling like family community of residents that they are caring for. And so it's a very different environment than where some of the other nurses are working, where there's a more transient population there. But we're doing everything we can to ensure not only that our healthcare workers are well paid and happy, but our whole employee culture is a very positive one that we really invest in making sure that that our employees are happy, they feel valued, and as a result, our retention rates are higher. Okay. Can you, do you see anything on here you want to address, Heather?
So as a couple planning to enter Riverwoods, if one of us needs to go into assisted living at some point, but the other spouse is still independent, can one person in the original independent living apartment while the other is in assisted living apartment without any extra cost except the 2 extra meals per day? Exactly, yes. So you will be able to maintain 2 spaces. So you would keep your independent, one spouse would keep the independent living home and the other would be in the assisted living home. And exactly that, the 2 meals per day would be the only price change there.
Great. Thank you, Heather.
You're
We have a
welcome.
question about if you select a 90% refundable contract, live at RiverWoods for 25 years, do you get the 90% of the entry fee returned? And that answer is yes. The only exception to that would be if you outlived your assets and you ran out of money to pay your monthly service fees, we would start dipping into the refundable portion of your entry fee. So some people live a very long time, much longer than they expected. And that would be the exception to the rule. But generally, the way that we qualify people financially is to ensure that we can preserve that portion, that refundable portion of their entry fee to return to their estate upon their passing. We have a question about, let's see. If one enters a CCRC, is there any deterrence if that person or couple spent a large, I think that meant deference, a large part of the year elsewhere? So I think this is a reference to if you have a residence at RiverWoods, but you also have a residence somewhere else that you go there seasonally, that's totally fine with us. There will be a small offset to your monthly service fees. And you can also reduce your meal plan down to the lowest level. So there is a small offset for that. And I will say it is small because we're still covering you for healthcare. So if you're decide to go to Florida for the winter and something happens and you need to be in either temporary or permanent health care, you could be covered by that by your contract with RiverWoods.
Lisa, in your words, how would you describe the difference between the contracts of Manchester and Durham? So the type A versus type B, what would you say would be the most significant difference?
So Manchester type B, first of all, it's a 70% refundable contract. And when you go over to, or if you go over to a higher level of care, your monthly service fee is going to increase. Whereas in Durham, which is a type A community, it's a 90% refundable contract if you're an individual. It's an 80% refundable if you're in a couple. And if you move over to healthcare, the monthly service fee, if you're a couple, will increase by a flat amount for that second person. So I actually represent Exeter, so I'm not completely informed on the details of Durham and Manchester, but that's basically the difference. It's part of it's the refundability, and part of it is what incremental fees you would pay if you transitioned over to healthcare. Let's see. We answered that. We have a question about does the type differ from state to state? And I'm not sure the type, what the question is, the type of CCRCs. I think there's all types in all states. So not clear on that question from you, Kevin. If you want to add more context to that, that would be great.
I think one thing to consider from that is that in a way, all the communities are a little bit different from each other. So it's really good to do some of that exploring and looking at what those checklists ask, because they may vary, even though they may all be a type A, there may be small ways that they'll vary a little bit community to community. So it may not even be a state difference. It may just be a community or a company difference.
Right. Question here about when we implemented the wage increases that I spoke to earlier, what effect did that have on our fees? During kind of post-pandemic, we had, or pre-pandemic, we had averaged around a 3% annual increase on our monthly service fees. And then when we got into pandemic, inflation happened, building materials went up, energy went up, food went up, and then our wages went up. So during the kind of couple years after the pandemic, our at least in Exeter, our monthly service fees were increased by 6% and 8% the 2 years after that. And 5% of the 8% was tied to wage increases. So, net of that, it would have been back down to around 3%. In this current fiscal year, which started in July, our increase in Exeter was 3.25% on the monthly service fee. So we're kind of back down to where we were pre-pandemic. We have a question about where the residents come from. Again, this will vary by community. I think if you jump into one of the RiverWoods 101 webinars that Heather spoke to earlier, we have one for each of our 3 communities. You'll find that varies a little bit. I will say in Exeter, about half of our residents are coming from New Hampshire. And about, I would say 80% are coming from one of the 6 New England states, and the rest are from out of the region. How is the entrance fee determined? It's determined based on the size of the residence. So whether it's a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a cottage, it's all based on the size of the residence. Let's see. I think we answered that one. We have a question about the annual price increases in Manchester. I do not have that information, Peter, but I can have somebody follow up with you on that, unless anybody from Manchester wants to chatter me and tell me what that is. I do not have that top of my mind. We have a question about training. What training do caregivers receive prior to employment? I mean, most of the people we're hiring have some sort of training and experience already in healthcare. So they might be coming from a home healthcare agency. But some of them might be coming out of school, being trained as a licensed nursing assistant. And maybe on their way to becoming an RN. We do have scholarship funds and tuition reimbursement. So we're very much about trying to grow our healthcare workers and improve their skills. There's also a lot of other training that all of our employees go through pertaining to working with a healthcare population, working with elderly residents. We get training on dementia care. There's all sorts of health and safety training that all of our employees go through. Okay. Let's see. We have a question about the waiting list. It really varies again by community. Probably best to have have a conversation with your sales counselor about that, because it depends on the size of the residence, the campus you're on, and so forth. So Stephen, I will have your sales counselor follow up with you on that. And let's see, we have a question about long-term care insurance. Can that be used to lower your monthly costs if you transition from independent to assisted? I can speak to Exeter. Yes, you can. If you have a long-term care insurance policy, you can actually file claims with your provider, your policy. to get reimbursed for some of the fees that you're paying to us. It's a little different again in each community. So again, that would be a good one to talk to your sales counselor about.
As a New Englander, how is weather addressed? Very thoughtfully. We have wonderful teams that are available to remove snow. The landscaping is always pristine, so those needs are really taken care of, which is wonderful. We also have very big generators if anything were to happen. So that has been very thoughtfully addressed and planned at each of the communities.
So we just got an answer to the Manchester price increase was 4% on the monthly service fees for this current year. We have a question about the plans for a new healthcare building. That would be in the Exeter community. Do you want to answer that one, Heather?
Yeah, so that would be, we're still in sort of the preliminary phases of the design of that structure. But really the goal of that is to provide a beautiful new facility that's going to have state-of-the-art equipment. It's going to have some new spaces available to residents to enjoy, and it's just going to be a really beautiful addition to the community. And then with Durham, they're expanding, just kind of, if you visit the community, when you go up the hill is sort of to the right. So towards the left, they'll be adding a few buildings in there, as well as a few amenity spaces. All of these projects are right now in development. I couldn't give you an exact timeline, but we do expect to see, progress in probably the next year on these to be started. So we're still working through a lot of the logistics, but more to come.
Great, thank you, Heather.
Sure.
We have a question about the Insider's Guide. I think there was a question about, do we provide a hard copy? We do have hard copies available. I think we have some still available, but most of the time we're sending that out electronically. And then within that, there's a question about, does the guide provide any insight into financial qualifications? I don't think it does, because it's different for every community that you're applying to.
And then how do we find actual amounts for entry fees and monthly fees? I would say reach out, and it can be a conversation on really what your needs are and what you're looking for, and then we can help answer those questions.
Question about, do we think that the new healthcare building plan for Exeter will significantly raise the monthly fees? That is not the expectation. Shortly following that healthcare building being opened up, we're adding more independent living residences here in Exeter, which will provide a very robust stream of both entry fees as well as monthly service fees, which will help offset some of the expense of our new healthcare building. I think we answered the one about, you just answered the one about the fees, right? We'll have somebody get in touch with you about that. So what health problems would keep one from being able to move into independent living? I think, Heather explained this a little bit earlier about when we're getting ready to offer you a residence within our community, you would have a clinical consultation with one of our nurse practitioners, and that consultation would be talking about what level of care is most appropriate for you. If you're, fully independent, then obviously independent living is appropriate. If you are needing some assistance, but want to live in independent living, that assistance you would need to provide on your own, because our current model does not provide support, healthcare support within the independent living residences. We have a question about the size of the communities. Exeter has about just shy of 400 residences. I believe Durham and Manchester each have about 150, and somebody can correct me if I misquoted on that. And I think we answered that. I think we answered that. And then age range of people in Exeter and Durham. I mean, I think they're all pretty similar. We have people in independent living from their mid-60s to over 100. It is a very broad range. I think the average age is around 84, at least in Exeter it is. But we have people of all different ages moving in. We have a question about the checklist slide.
This is one of them, and then in a second I will show the one right before this so that you can see both. Just to make sure people can take a picture of it or read it.
Great. And while that's up there, I think we have one last question here, and then we're going to wrap up. What is the ethnic diversity? Again, Walter, that's going to vary by community between the three of us. You know, our ethnic diversity is pretty reflective of New Hampshire's diversity or New England's diversity. You know, we certainly probably have more economic diversity than we have ethnic diversity here. But again, it's going to depend on the community.
And we are open to accepting anyone.
Yep.
I just want to make sure you got to see both of your checklists. But these are in that insider guide as well, so we'll be able to share that too.
Yep. And Heather, is the insider's guide accessible from the website?
I believe so, yes. So we'll make sure that that's updated.
Great. Okay, well, I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you, Heather, for a wonderful overview of life care communities. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. We hope this has been helpful to you. And we encourage you to tune in to more webinars, our financial one coming up on October 22nd, as well as the individual RiverWoods 101 webinars that we host monthly for each of our 3 communities. So thanks again for joining, and have a terrific rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.